Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a little bit different type of video. Now, I've spent the last few months pointing out problems that I see with this game and some of the issues that I think might be surrounding it. And so today I want to sort of take a different type of spin on it. I want to pretend like basically the old Fallout games don't even exist. I wanted to look at this game just as a game. Pretend this is a brand new IP, Fallout. Take the 76 right off the back end of it and just say this is a brand new IP that none of us have ever played. What would this game need to do to be successful in 2018 as far as a games as a service model type of game? What does this game need to accomplish? So I put together a list, sort of the top 10 things that I think this game has to do properly, or at least it needs to hit on a lot of these if it wants to have long-term success. So let's just get the first one out of the way. This one's obvious. It's something that's the elephant in the room right now, and that is the performance issues. Now, we're going to be seeing this week, they said that they're going to be having everything sort of smoothed out. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but they've said that they've identified the major issues that they had with the performance from the earlier footage we've seen. So Bethesda says that by the time the beta comes out, which is just on Tuesday now, that it's supposed to be much more smooth, much more optimized. So we'll see how that holds up. But I think obviously, in an online game, performance is always going to be an issue. Whether we're talking about frame rate, or lag, or hit detection, whether or not the enemies are going down in time when they're supposed to, all that sort of thing. If the game isn't going to run smoothly, that's going to kill it right away. So, first off the bat, yes, the performance has to get optimized, and we need to see this happen pretty quickly. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to launch in great shape. I know some people think that it's all going to be smoothed out. I don't see that happening. But let's see how it goes. We'll give it a little bit of time. But that's something that has to happen right away, is they have to get everything smoothed out. It has to be running properly. Hit detection has to be on. All of that. So we'll see how that goes. So let's just move on to the next thing. And this is something that's going to be critical in a game like this, because I know some people still think that this is going to be an RPG experience, but I'm telling you, this is a classic looter-shooter type game. That's what you're going to end up having. That's what the end game is going to be. This whole game is driven towards being a looter shooter. I hate to break it to you people, but that is what the game's going to be. So let's just face the facts. And so that means that everything's just going to come down to the end game loop. What are you going to be doing on a minute-to-minute basis as you progress? Once you hit that soft level cap and you're just grinding to get better stuff, what is going to be drawing you in? That's going to be critical. And tied right into that is something that some of these games sort of struggle with. So what they do is they try to lure in sort of a general audience, and they make things sort of simplified. But over time, the people that stick with the game aren't going to stick with it for long if they've simplified the loot drop system to the point where there's nothing interesting to chase, there's no reason to keep grinding, because we all know with these games as a service type games, over time people drop off. You always hear reports of massive player count drops after the first couple months. 70, 80, sometimes 90% with some of these games. They really have major drop-offs. So at the end of the day, you're just going to have that dedicated base that keeps coming back, unless this game is just a mega success. But based on what we see industry-wide with this sort of game, you're going to have to figure that a lot of the player base is going to drop off. So you're just going to have that hardcore few that stick with it, and they're going to need something to grind for, which means that over time, they're going to have to complicate the loot drop system. They're going to have stuff like extra gear sets to find. They're going to have to keep incorporating stuff like that. Stuff that can strengthen your build. Weapons and armor sets that play off each other. All that stuff. Now, there could be randomized stuff, and I know that there's going to be a lot of different randomized loot drops anyway. But if Bethesda is just going to sit by with the sort of loot table drops that they've had in all their other previous games, and it doesn't really expand once you get to after that soft level cap, if it doesn't broaden its appeal at the end, that's really going to kill off that hardcore player base from grinding and sort of getting that extra loot. They're really going to have to work on that. I don't know. Obviously, none of us have gotten to that end game stage yet, so that's going to be key, though, when we see both the end game loop and what sort of gear they're going to be dropping. It's going to have to be something that's going to entice people to keep going, sort of a carrot hung out in front of them to keep playing. That's going to be critical. Now, something else that's going to be very important is quest variety. Now, from what we've seen from the footage and what Bethesda has described to us over the last couple months, a lot of your missions are going to be getting picked up off holotapes, off notes you find off bodies, off computer terminals, and the footage that we've seen so far backs that up. Now, we know that there's not going to be the normal NPCs giving you quests. There's going to be sort of static NPCs out in the world. So most of your questing is going to come from sort of audio cues that you get off holotapes, stuff like that. And the thing is, that might keep people's attention for a little bit, but is that really going to keep a broader audience around for a long period of time? They're going to have to make sure that they spice things up. They can't just have the same type of mission structure over and over again in a games as a service type model, because that is going to drive players away very quickly. Once you get to the point where you've seen most of the map, where you've gotten to that soft level cap, if people are just picking up a note and going to a quest, killing a bunch of things and then coming back, that's not really going to satisfy anything. Now, people will say that Fallout 4 did the same type thing, but I'm not comparing this to other games. I'm saying as a games as a service title. If people are just doing the same type of quest structure over and over again, that's not going to work long term. That's something that they're really going to need to work on, is quest variety. Now, something else that's going to be very important is the DLC support that they said they're going to be providing for free. But what is that going to entail? Is that just going to be, here's some skin packs, here's a holiday skin pack, here's some new weapons? That's not really going to cut it long term if that's what they're planning. Now, we don't know what they're going to be adding, but I'm telling you now, what they're going to need to add is some meaty, substantive DLC expansions. That's what they're going to have. New zones, or adding new things into the existing map, like a new dungeon, if you will, some sort of new area to explore. It's going to have to be something worthwhile. If they think that they're just going to be able to expand with skins and whatnot, that's not going to cut it. I hope that they realize that already, but we don't know anything about their DLC plans at this point, so all we can do is speculate. But I'm saying, long term, if they're going to support this game, it's going to have to be big expansions to lure people in. It's going to get lapsed players back in, and that's not going to happen if you're just offering new skins and some new weapons. It's going to have to be something meaty, something people can really sink their teeth into, and that's something that they're really going to have to look at as they go forward. What are they going to be offering us as far as DLC? That's going to be critical to the long-term success here. Now, something else that is critical to this game, as far as I'm concerned, is the survival elements that they decide to incorporate, how they decide to streamline that moving forward, because that's something that's going to need to be balanced. If they're going to have survival elements at all, they can't just have it be a meter going off every 10 minutes saying, "You're thirsty, go get some water." If that's all it's going to be, maybe they should just do away with it altogether. I think it needs to be either robust or not really there at all. Because if it's just going to be sort of a nuisance in an online game when you're constantly going into your menu, if you're supposed to be out exploring the world and you're constantly having to go into your menu to drink water, that's really just going to slow the game down. So I think that's sort of a situation where they need to figure out what exactly they want to do, because if it's just going to be this sort of mealy-mouthed survival system where it's just going to be sort of half-assed, I don't think that it needs to be in the game. So they need to work on that balancing. I think that's going to be, if people are just getting a timer going off every couple minutes saying, "Drink some water, drink some water, drink some water," that's going to get annoying very fast. So that's something I really think they need to think about it. I'm not really sure that that even needs to be in this game. I think that they just sort of included it. I think over time we might see them scale that back or do away with it altogether, or make a separate mode where that is more heavily pronounced. That I don't see sort of the system that they want to do in place. I don't really see that working all that great. I think that that's something that they're really going to want to look at in this type of game model. And along the similar vein is PvP, which we've discussed and many channels have discussed a lot as we've gone through the last couple months. And I've said it before and I'll say it again here, they need to figure out what they're going to do with this. I don't think the current system is going to be acceptable for too many people once they've been fiddling around with it for a couple of days. Once they get to the top level and it's just, people running around the map, how's it really going to look? How's the PvP really going to enact? And I think what they're going to have to end up doing is something I suggested before, which is sort of have a closed off area of the map, or provide a separate map altogether where PvP is fully enabled. I know they have sort of a hunter system that you can go and engage with PvP. We heard some of that, people talking about that, but is that really going to satisfy people long term? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that's all that people really need. We'll see how it goes. But I think it's sort of a situation where they don't really know what they want to do. They're going to try to see how it plays out. And I just don't think that the current iteration of what they have is going to be satisfying for too many people. I think there's a lot of different things that they could do. My easiest suggestion for me would be to just have a separate area where it's fully enabled. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. They're obviously going to do what they want to do, and so far, what we've seen so far, I don't think is going to work long term. I think that's something that they really need to look at. Something else that's going to be kind of important is the settlement building, and of course, it's not really settlements. It's going to be just more of a home base. So, what we have to have here is something where you can get in. Now we know it's going to be sort of that cumbersome system that they used in Fallout 4. It's not going to be, you know, this super speedy crafting system. But what they need to do is they need to make getting material not feel like a gigantic chore. It needs to be something where you can make, you know, a decent amount of success. If you're grinding for 4 hours and you only have enough material to like make a wall and a bed, that's not really going to do it. Now, I know they want people playing for a long, long time, but I think people would rather be fiddling around and customizing their base than just grinding for hours just to find resource gathering. And I think that that might be what their thing is here. I think that they're relying on the junk collecting and the base building to really fill out the hours on this game, and I'm not sure that's the greatest way to go. I think they're going to need an easier way. Now, they have mining resources that you can find on the map. They've talked about stuff like that, but I think that they're going to need to make it so it's just not too cumbersome to try to accumulate resources in the game. If they drag it out too much, that can really drag down the experience. I think they're going to have to be fairly generous with building resources as far as that goes if they want people to be fiddling around with the base building, and I think that that is what they want. I think they want people showing off those screenshots, sort of luring people into the game. I think that's what they're looking for. So they're going to have to be relatively generous when it comes to doling out resources. Now, something else I know that is very important for some people is the modding situation. And I know that this is an actual deal breaker for a lot of people, especially on the PC end of things, talking about how free are they going to be to mod. People worried about, hey, I'm not going to be able to have these performance mods or these, you know, the quality of life mods that I want in my game that I need if I want to play a Bethesda game. And now we know that they said eventually we're going to get private servers and mods. But that's not really going to cut it for a while because they're not going to be there. So when they do arrive, they're really going to have to loosen up the reins and let people do what they want. And I'm not sure that the way they have it set up right now, where everything's going to be running through Bethesda.net, and people who know more about modding than me have told me this is going to be a really restrictive system that they have in place, and that's really going to drag down the enjoyment for a lot of people that play these games specifically because they can mod them to hell and back. So if they're not going to be able to do that in this game, that is really going to drag down, especially like I said, the PC side of things. That I think that could negatively affect the player base on that side. And that modding scene is what keeps these games alive, maybe longer than some of them should stay alive, longer than their average life cycle for that type of game, surely. So if Fallout 76 wants that long-term success and that lineage, well, they're going to have to ease things up with the modders. They're going to have to loosen all the restrictions as much as possible when those things actually arrive. And like I said, I'm not sure if even waiting the year or more that they've said, I don't think that's coming quickly enough, to be honest. I think that they need to work on trying to get that out as quickly as possible, because that's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. That's what I've seen all over the place. Now, last but not least, this is something that is very important, and that is, how is Bethesda going to handle post-launch community relationships? They need to get some people in place that are not going to be making little cute little jokes, trying to be clever with the audience. They need to be straightforward, and most importantly, they need to fulfill the promises that they set going forward. That's something that's very important with this type of game model, is the community relationship. If you are sort of jerking your players around and telling them stuff that doesn't end up happening later on down the line, they're going to remember that. And the more you do that, the more you're going to poison the well. Now, we've already seen something like this with this stress test situation where the original community announcement that they put out is not what's actually going to happen, because as we've seen, looks like we're not going to be getting any more stress tests, especially not on Xbox, obviously, because that beta is coming out in just 2 days on Tuesday. So obviously that's something that they've already sort of gone back on, and if they can't do that after launch, they need to stick to what they say, because the community will hold them accountable for that. And I would suggest to Mr. Pete Hines, just stay off Twitter about this game after it launches. Let your community team that is going to be handling this game specifically deal with the audience. Your tweets coming out with your little jokes and your misinformation is not going to help the situation at all, because we know, for example, with this stress test situation, he put out a bunch of tweets alluding to these additional stress tests that now we know aren't happening either. So just, Pete, stay off Twitter. How's that? Stop talking about this game. Let your team handle this. Let them try to figure this out going forward, because if the community leaders and the forum directors are sitting there and they're jerking the player base around, that is not going to be helpful to this game in any way, shape, or form. They have to nail that down. That is essential for any game of this type. So that's pretty much my list. What do you guys think? I'm sure there's something that I missed here that you guys want to add to the list. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff to talk about. Maybe you disagree with some of the stuff here, don't think it's very important at all, and that might be true. But you let me know what you think. So I'm Coach Toolshed. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to stay in tune as we move forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.